Time loop. Einstein's theory of relativity reveals that time itself isn't absolute, and the 2004 film Primer shows exactly how confusing temporal mechanics can become. In this low-budget indie science fiction film, two engineers accidentally discover time travel while working on a weight reduction experiment in a garage, creating a loop where objects, and eventually people, can travel backward through time. The discovery spirals into confusion because the mechanics of time travel themselves become paradoxical and hard to follow, which is exactly the point. The film deliberately obscures the plot to mirror the confusion and complexity that real time travel would create. Einstein's general relativity, published in 1915, explains gravity as space-time curvature caused by mass, and the core physics governing how time actually works forms the foundation of how advanced space travel movies explain their paradoxes. Time dilation, the effect where clocks near massive objects or traveling at high speeds tick slower than stationary clocks, was verified experimentally when aircraft carrying atomic clocks returned slightly behind ground clock, exactly as relativity predicted. Primer takes a different approach. Instead of dealing with gravitational time dilation like Interstellar, it shows the chaos of actually creating a time travel device and living with the consequences of bootstrap paradoxes, where information and objects cycle through time without a clear origin point. The closer you are to a massive gravitational source, or the more you manipulate causality, the more complex time becomes, which is why characters in Primer struggle to keep track of which version of themselves they are and what timeline they belong to. This creates profound paradoxes, where observers in different moments of time experience reality differently, and causality itself becomes negotiable. Time travel mechanics are not theoretical speculation. They're grounded in real physics principles, which is why movies like Primer can explore them seriously without abandoning scientific plausibility entirely. NASA uses relativity corrections for GPS satellites orbiting Earth, the same underlying math that governs how time behaves in extreme conditions that Primer fictionally explores through its time travel device. This is the scientific foundation that makes several space travel movie paradoxes actually work within physics. Rather than being impossible, these movies are simply applying real relativity and temporal mechanics in extreme scenarios, and asking what happens when causality itself can be manipulated. The fascinating aspect of time travel shown in Primer is that forward progression becomes meaningless. The characters can revisit moments, alter decisions, and create loops. Yet logic still demands that events remain internally consistent, or the timeline fractures into something unintelligible. Modern technology like atomic clocks is so precise that they can detect time dilation effects even at airplane speeds, making this phenomenon one of the most directly observable consequences of Einstein's work, and validating the science behind fictional time machines. Understanding how time actually works is essential for comprehending how every subsequent paradox in space travel cinema actually resolves itself through legitimate physics rather than magic or pseudoscience. And Primer forces viewers to engage with this understanding head-on. Planet of the Apes. The original 1968 Planet of the Apes presents a mind-bending time travel paradox. Astronauts travel 2,000 years into the future at near light speed, only to discover they were back on Earth all along. This paradox actually has a scientific explanation through time dilation. The spaceship travels at nearly the speed of light. Due to relativity, the crew ages only approximately 2,000 years less than Earth. While the crew experiences minimal elapsed time at near light speed, Earth's calendar advances thousands of years. The time dilation equation shows that traveling astronauts and Earth observers experience different time rates simultaneously. The crew experiences the relativity effect but assumes they're on an alien planet. The revelation comes when they realize they landed back on Earth in its far future. The paradox dissolves because this isn't time travel backward, but extreme forward time dilation. The film accurately depicts relativity's asymmetric time effects. This is the masterclass in how movie paradoxes work. What seems impossible becomes logical once you understand that observers in different motion states experience time differently. The film's brilliant twist works precisely because audiences expect time to be universal and constant, making the revelation that the crew is on Earth shocking despite being perfectly consistent with relativity. The movie predates much popular understanding of relativity by decades, making it even more impressive that it captured the core concept of differential aging across reference frames. Contemporary physicists have praised the film's ending as an elegant visualization of how time dilation can create what appears to be time travel without actually requiring any violation of physical laws. Martian Farming. In The Martian, an astronaut grows potatoes on Mars using Martian soil and human waste as fertilizer. This seems impossible, but scientific research suggests it could actually work under the right conditions. Mars soil contains essential minerals for plant growth, except reactive nitrogen. Human waste provides nitrogen compounds, specifically nitrates, absent from Martian soil. Freeze-dried, desiccated waste kills pathogens that would otherwise contaminate crops. Mars soil tests show better water retention than Earth soil for plant growth. Mars gravity is 1/3 Earth gravity. International Space Station experiments confirm plants grow normally at partial gravity. Perchlorate contamination in Martian soil is solvable because water washing removes toxins. Sunlight on Mars is 44% dimmer than Earth, comparable to northern Canada in midwinter. The movie's grow lights provide supplemental illumination, making potato growth feasible. The potato growth timeline of 48 sols, or Martian days, is optimistic but not impossible. Test germination in Mars soil simulants shows successful plant development. The paradox isn't that farming on Mars is impossible, it's that we discovered it's actually feasible. The movie shows speculative but scientifically grounded agriculture, making it one of the few survival-based space movies operating within real constraints. NASA's own Mars soil simulants, created at Johnson Space Center, have been used in experiments that validate nearly every claim the film makes about Martian agriculture. The psychological resilience required for an astronaut to invest effort in farming while stranded would mirror real survival strategies used by castaways, making Watney's approach both scientifically sound and emotionally grounded. Recent research into hydroponics and aeroponics for Martian habitats suggests that the film's basic premise might actually be more feasible than the water-based approach, potentially opening new avenues for long-term Martian colonization strategies. Looper's Rainmaker paradox. Looper, the 2012 film directed by Rian Johnson, presents one of the clearest examples of a bootstrap paradox in cinema through the character of the Rainmaker. In this time travel thriller, assassins called Loopers kill targets sent back from the future, and the story hinges on whether young Joe can prevent the birth of a tyrannical dictator known as the Rainmaker. The paradox emerges when older Joe discovers that his attempts to kill the Rainmaker as a child will actually cause the child to become the Rainmaker. His actions to prevent a future create that very future. The bootstrap paradox, also called the ontological or information paradox, involves an object or information sent to the past with no original creation point. This creates an apparent causality violation where the effect causes itself. Looper shows exactly how this works. Old Joe's violence toward young Sid causes his mother's death, which traumatizes Sid and sets him on the path to becoming the Rainmaker, meaning Old Joe creates the very villain he traveled back to eliminate. The 2020 paper in Classical and Quantum Gravity by Tobar and Costa mathematically resolved this apparent paradox. Research shows bootstrap paradoxes are logically consistent with no actual contradiction. Novikov's self-consistency principle states the universe ensures events remain mutually consistent. If information loops through time, it simply always existed in that loop. No origin is required if all points in spacetime are equally real. This doesn't violate causality. It's an alternative causality structure. The time traveler maintains free will. They just can't create actual paradoxes. Objects and information have no beginning because temporal loops have no start point. What seems paradoxical, something creating itself, is actually logically sound if you accept that all moments in time are equally real. This fundamentally changes how we think about causality and time. The beauty of the bootstrap paradox is that it requires no external explanation or hand-waving. The existence of the information or object across the entire timeline is perfectly valid if we accept that time is a four-dimensional structure rather than a flowing river. Philosophers and physicists have grappled with whether bootstrap paradoxes violate conservation of information, but modern analysis suggests they don't. The information exists in a closed loop across spacetime without ever being created or destroyed. This resolution suggests that if time travel were ever possible, the universe would naturally exclude scenarios that create logical paradoxes, making the bootstrap paradox not paradoxical at all, but rather a natural consequence of how consistent timelines must function. Predestination Loop. Predestination features one of cinema's most complex time travel paradoxes. A time traveler is his own grandfather, mother, and father, existing in a closed causality loop where his actions necessarily bring about his own birth. The main character, John/Jane, is biologically their own ancestor across 3 generations. The timeline structure shows John travels to 1963 and impregnates his younger female self, Jane. The resulting child is taken to a 1945 orphanage and grows up as both Jane and John. The bootstrap paradox mechanism means John's birth depends entirely on his own future actions. The time travel device is invented in 1981, enabling the entire loop. Without time travel invention, John wouldn't exist. Without John, time travel is never invented. The film shows no original timeline, only the closed loop itself. This is a predestination paradox, where attempts to change the past ensure the original outcome. Events are absolutely predetermined. The time traveler is part of history, not changing it. The barkeep character ensures the loop continues by killing the fizzle bomber. Each loop iteration happens because the previous iteration already happened. The Ouroboros symbol, the snake eating its tail, represents the infinite cycle. No paradox exists if time is a block universe where all moments coexist. Predestination solves the paradox by accepting that the past is immutable, and the time traveler is already part of that unchangeable history. It's less about physics and more about accepting that causality loops are internally consistent. The film's narrative complexity rivals theoretical physics in its rigor, forcing viewers to abandon linear thinking and accept that past, present, and future are equally real and immutable. The body modification surgery in the film creates a plot mechanism that ensures physical impossibility of paradox creation, grounding the predestination theme in something concrete rather than pure abstraction. Predestination's approach to time travel, where the universe is a fixed tapestry of events that cannot be altered, represents one of the most logically consistent frameworks for resolving all potential time travel paradoxes while maintaining dramatic tension. Contact's impossible message. In the 1997 film Contact, astronomer Ellie Arroway receives a radio signal from the star system Vega containing television broadcasts from Earth, specifically the first television signal powerful enough to penetrate Earth's ionosphere, Adolf Hitler's 1936 Olympic opening address. This creates an immediate paradox. If the signal traveled at light speed from Vega, which is 25 light-years away, the message should have taken 25 years to arrive. Yet it contains human broadcasts from decades before radio technology advanced far enough to send signals into space with that power. The signal also contains blueprints for a mysterious machine and poses the fundamental question about faster-than-light communication and the causality paradoxes it creates. Faster-than-light travel, or communication, creates an immediate time travel paradox, because observers moving at different velocities disagree about what happens now. Physics provides an unexpected solution to this apparent impossibility. Special relativity shows faster-than-light travel implies the possibility of sending information to the past. Relativity of simultaneity means different observers disagree on event order depending on relative motion. If observer A sees event X, then event Y, observer B, moving at relativistic speed, might see Y, then X. This creates grandfather paradox potential, where you send a message backward that prevents its own sending. Faster than light requires either tachyons, which are likely impossible, or exotic mechanisms like wormholes. The physics solution involves events adjusting themselves to maintain consistency. University of Queensland research in 2020 showed paradox-free time travel is mathematically consistent. The consistent history's interpretation suggests events ensure their own causality through self-adjustment. You can make changes, but outcomes recalibrate around you. Quantum entanglement appears faster than light, but cannot transmit information, so no paradox occurs. Actual faster-than-light communication remains scientifically impossible. The paradox dissolves not through exotic physics, but through understanding that consistency is fundamental to causality. Time doesn't permit violations of its own structure. The relativity of simultaneity is perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of special relativity, yet it's been confirmed experimentally countless times through particle decay measurements and astronomical observations of distant events. This principle alone explains why faster-than-light communication would create causality violations. Different observers in different reference frames would literally disagree about which event caused which, eliminating objective causality. The University of Queensland research provides mathematical proof that even if time travel were possible, self-consistency would be enforced at a fundamental level, meaning paradoxes cannot exist even in principle. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every new upload. Thanks for watching.